mute yourself directly. I've muted you for the room, but I need to unmute for the roll call. So if everyone could please mute. Teresa, are you ready for us to begin?
Yes.
All right. All right, then we're going to call to order this. Or someone trying to get attention at the moment. We're going to call to order the March 25th special meeting of the West Sacramento City Council, Financing Authority and Redevelopment Successor Agency. Tonight's meeting is being held telephonically pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order number N-2920, issued on March 17, 2020. The order allows governing bodies of local agencies to hold their meetings electronically, provided that members of the public can observe and can comment electronically as well. Because this is the first time a meeting of this kind has been held in our city, we may experience some technology hurdles. City staff has been working very hard to make sure that this meeting can be live streamed on the city's website and aired on our public access cable channels. However, in the event that any of this is not happening in real time or not working, a complete video of the meeting is being recorded and will also be posted on the city's website tomorrow. So please be patient with us as we're working to perfect this process. Given the unique circumstances of tonight's meeting, I'd like to spell out a few of the guidelines that will allow us and future teleconference meetings to run efficiently and transparently. And so for members of the City Council and staff, please ensure that your lines are muted when you're not speaking. You'll need to unmute prior to speaking. And for members of the council and for the city manager, if you would please use the unmute function to simply serve as a hand raise for tonight's meeting in order to seek recognition, and then I'll recognize you for questions or for comments. Each time that you're speaking tonight, please state your name. It will sound redundant, and I will have just said your name, but for at least tonight, we want to make sure that the video and the live streaming allows every member of the public to hear exactly who is speaking. And so that everybody can be clearly heard, we ask that everybody speak just one person at a time and follow our procedures for recognition. For action items, if you're making a motion or a second, please be sure to state your name and indicate if you're making a motion or if you're making the second. And all of our actions will be taken by roll call vote. For members of the public comment for any item on this agenda was accepted by the city clerk up until the call to order at 7:00 p.m. All comments have been provided to the city council in writing and will be made visible to the public on the screen at the appropriate time on the agenda as well. And for tonight's meeting only, as we transition, the public comment will also be read out loud by the clerk in addition to being visible on the screen. So with that, I want to thank the members of the public and the City Council for being here for this special meeting. Thank our staff for their work in order to make it happen. This has been a monumental effort as part of so many actions that have been taken in the past 2 weeks, even since our emergency meeting, our special meeting last week and our emergency meeting the week prior to that. Our business tonight will focus exclusively on the city's COVID-19 response actions. Having said that, our future meetings we will be bringing regular business in order to continue the sustained operations of the city and our services for our residents and for our businesses and for others in our community. But tonight's focus of the special meeting is on COVID-19. So, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll to verify the attendance of all the members of the council?
Yes. Councilmember Guerrero?
Here.
Councilmember Ledesma?
Here.
Councilmember Orozco?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sandin?
Here.
Mayor Cabaldo? Mayor Pro Tem Sandin?
Here.
Mayor Cabaldo?
Here. All right. Okay. With that, then we're going to proceed to. With that, then we're going to proceed to. Come on. Does anyone have two devices on? Does anyone have two devices on? Yeah, Jeff. Okay. Mr. Mitchell, Ms. Michael, could you please mute yourselves? All right, thank you. Okay, with that then, we're going to proceed to item 1A, which is council communications. Are there reports or other communications this evening by any member of the council? And I don't see any requests. If I missed any, if anyone wishes, this would be the time. Maybe for the first time, raise your hand or not, but I don't see any. All right, so we'll proceed then to item 1B, which is appointments. We have no appointments this evening. That takes us then to the consent agenda, which is items 2 and 3. Are there any questions on the consent agenda or any items to remove for separate question or comment? All right, seeing none, is there a motion on the consent agenda? Mr. Ledesma?
Yes, this is Councilmember Ledesma. I'll make the motion for the recommended action.
Martha Guerrero seconds.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Seeing no debate, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll on the consent agenda?
Yes. Councilmember Guerrero,
Here, yes.
Councilmember Ledesma,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sandin,
Aye.
Councilmember Orozco.
Aye.
And Mayor Cabaldon.
Yes. All right, so
Thank
that
you.
motion carries 5-0. That brings us to item 4, which is an update and direction to staff on the city's COVID-19 response actions. And we have received public comment on this item. So Madam Clerk, may I turn it to you for both the screen viewing and for the reading of the public comment items?
Thank you, Mayor Cabaldon. The first comment is to be read aloud.
Sure.
Oh, sorry. One moment. The first comment was requested to be read aloud. What is the city of West Sacramento going to do about the 28-day squatter's right currently in place? As a community resource person, I've had motels telling me that they won't accept our long-term guests from the Winter Warming Center or other homeless clients without us not taking them out on the 27th day and relocate to somewhere else. I don't want to move any of our clients from motel to motel. Numerous motels are telling me that they don't want the expense of hiring attorneys to have the guests removed after the shelter in place is over, if clients are placed and the clients will not leave. How can our homeless under the age of 65 be able to be participating shelter in place if no places are available for them to go? Sincerely, Sonia Creighton, St. Vincent de Paul, West Sacramento. I have further comments. Do you want them all read?
No, but would you please place on the screen for viewing the other comments that we have received?
Yes. Do I move forward?
Click.
Support for YOLO Food Bank allocation. I'd like to convey to the council my support for the YOLO Food Bank's request for a $100,000 allocation, especially important to their efforts in the COVID-19 climate. In addition to critical food resources, YOLO Food Bank has nimbly given our citizens and CBOs a centralized place from which to coordinate home delivery to seniors and the health compromised, and their efforts are supplying so many at most crucial time. Thanks for your consideration, Don Bosley.
All right, so what I would say, the comments that we've received that had the request for the read alouds, we should comply. We should fulfill that request. But I don't know that we need to read aloud all of the other comments as well that were submitted in writing. We're displaying them on the screen so that members of the public who are watching either the live stream or the recorded video can see the comments that would have been made at the rostrum if we've been meeting in person. And in addition to this, the City Council has each been provided the complete file of these comments as well to read alongside the items.
Thank you. This last comment is one of 3 Thank you, Mayor Cabaldo.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, so we're gonna, this is the update and direction to staff on the city's COVID-19 response actions, and we'll turn it to the city manager for the report as he's getting his system together. I simply want to acknowledge again, as we did last week, the tremendous work of our city manager, Aaron Laurel, the entire executive team, the management team, and every single staff member and volunteer that is a part of the City of West Sacramento team. The effort that has been demonstrated, the commitment, the care, the creativity has been extraordinary. And our city is going through a lot, like so many others, in every possible way, with every system being threatened and challenged, and virtually every resident dealing with sometimes catastrophic events, and also anxiety and fear about what's to come. And the city has been a stalwart of help and stability and support through this entire process. And the city's not some abstract concept. It is the men and women of the police department and the parks department and the public works department and the fire department and the administrative services and finance and HR departments and the community development department and some department I'm probably missing, but Aaron will correct me. It's all the people who worked so hard and without asking any questions at the outset, just knew that they were going to step up in order to make sure that critical services were protected, public safety was protected, infrastructure kept working, that folks that were staying at home still had access to clean, fresh water and sewer and police protection and fire protection, that everything still worked. And that as the world around them was so chaotic, the city was assuring continuity of services, while at the same time looking for every possible solution where we could to be helpful in the challenges that so many of our residents have been facing during this time. And so whether it was last week's ordinance on evictions or all the many other services to which the city has been developing or connecting residents to, really want to salute all of the people in City Hall and all of the departments that have been putting it all out on the line for our community. We're not omnipotent. The city is a powerful force for stability and for good and for relief in our city. I know we're all struggling in our own lives as well, our staff and I know my colleagues on the council, just as every other human being here. And a lot of folks are looking to the city to solve everything. And we don't have that capacity either. We'll hear later on about the fiscal impact to this crisis on city government and our own capacity to deliver services and to stay financially solvent. And we will have challenges later as well. And so we don't have all the answers. We don't have all of the solutions, but we're going to find the answers that we can, solve the problems that we can, and be here for and with our residents and businesses and others that make West Sacramento strong. And so, Aaron, if you would introduce the extensive item that we have tonight on what's been happening even since we met last week, and those items in which you would need some direction from the council going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. And I'm here at my home office, which has been surprisingly very productive during this time. If my eyes wander during this, it's only because I'm looking at notes on a bunch of different screens. But I want to start by thanking the mayor for that introduction, very appropriate, particularly the thanks to all the staff that have been working so hard across all departments, not just those involved in the emergency operations and response, but all the people that are trying to do their best to adapt to this remote environment and keep normal city business going. So on that note, we have our first meeting tonight done remotely. I want to thank our IT division in particular and the city clerk's office for getting that together. Earlier tonight on consent, you approved a new revised regular meeting schedule. So while this is a special meeting, meetings going forward will be weekly. We'll cover normal city business, like I mentioned, but the focus will also be on updating the council and the public on our emergency response. So with that, the staff report that you have tonight is meant to be the first of a series of sort of standard update reports. The process is laid out in the report. Right now we have the EOC activated. The city manager in the municipal code is designated as the emergency services director. The list of things that the EOC does during a time of local emergency is laid out in the report. But essentially it's our job is to coordinate all the services, emergency responses during this time. And so this report and the updates that will go with it, which are contained in attachment 1, will tend to look the same week to week with just the updates added, but we'll also be including any resolutions or council authorizations that need to be done to either catch up to something that the city acted on in the week before, or to authorize something that we would like to do in response going forward. And that's just a way to streamline the agenda so we don't have different resolutions for actions that are all related to the COVID-19 response. So I wanted to at least try to frame the discussion tonight. On the second page of the report, I listed a variety of topics that I would encourage the council to sort of think about in terms of giving additional direction to staff on response actions. I do want to echo the mayor's point, it's in the report as well, that we are a small city, we're a very capable city and staff, but the resources are finite. And there's only so much we can do with the people we have and the money we have. But there are a number of things that we're already involved in, that we're already doing. And we're looking to leverage a lot of that effort with some of these additional potential actions that we could undertake. So I want to turn your attention now to attachment 1 of the report. First, I apologize to the council and the public who are hopefully have that in front of them now. That attachment, we were working on it all day, and it's a compilation of all of the efforts that have gone in so far in emergency responses. It's meant to be very comprehensive, but it is not all inclusive. I want to emphasize that. There's lots of work happening in the city around the emergency response, but this is intended to sort of inventory and log all of the things that the city has been doing in order to update the council and the public on a weekly basis. So if we could look at that, I do want to get you up to speed with the things that have happened since the last meeting. I'm not going to go over everything I went over last time. That was sort of everything that happened between the council's emergency meeting up to the point of March 18th. But the topics that I will cover, the way this is organized, at least the way I've laid it out, there are 10 themes that we'll be covering. That doesn't mean those are the only 10 themes that apply to this situation, but they're the ones that tend to be more prevalent to the staff response. So and the city's response. So first is the emergency response itself, all the operations activities associated with that. The second is the continuity of our organization and core services. Third is the efforts around communication that are ongoing. The next is our fiscal planning and what I call readiness for the future, because we know this is going to have major impacts on the city's fiscal outlook. Housing and homelessness has been a major topic as we have gone through this. Similarly, business impacts and both on the current environment, business survival, but also looking ahead to recovery. And then also some of the social services elements of it, is particularly food distribution, has been a major theme in terms of trying to keep that pipeline going for the most disadvantaged and vulnerable residents in our community. And then related to ongoing city services, but because this is West Sacramento, we do a lot of development work here, real estate development. A major topic has been how do we keep that work going? So it sort of is a subtopic of its own. And then similarly, transportation and mobility. We are a city that focuses a lot on that, and there's major impacts of this crisis on the work we've been doing around that topic. And then lastly, senior citizens and youth, because again, there are major impacts, and the city has been focused in programs and different things for both populations in the recent past. So again, I want to just get you caught up to speed on the things that we've done since the March 18th meeting. First, on emergency operations, we had the council ratify the local emergency proclamation at the last meeting. We then followed up with that to schedule the weekly council meetings to have this topic available every time. The next step was to, now that the public health order had gone out, that actually happened to take effect the night of the council meeting at 12:01 midnight. So shortly after that, we established protocol with the county because a lot of the things we're struggling with right now, or at least in the early days of that, were questions we were getting from either businesses or residents with concerns about what activities were deemed essential or not. And so we set up a process where we were using our code enforcement paradigm. Josh Hurley, our code enforcement manager, is now the designated liaison between the county and also between our own law enforcement to take in those questions, answer the ones that are very clear. You know, it's either a yes or no answer. It's very clear in the order. But for the ones that aren't, that may need more guidance, Josh is authorized to contact the public health official's office, get that guidance, and then communicate it back to the business. We're expecting, and I think what we've been seeing so far is, for the most part, very much compliance from the business community and the community at large. However, you know, we do anticipate there will be times where we have to make those determinations, and we may get reports of things that shouldn't be happening, and we need to be ready to act on those. I want to emphasize, though, this is not being led as a law enforcement driven process. We're already sort of in this business of code enforcement. We're used to dealing with similar issues, and so we're leading with that. Code enforcement will be visiting businesses that are suspected of noncompliance, and if we need to, it could elevate to a law enforcement approach because it is a misdemeanor to violate the order. On the 24th, that was yesterday actually, we did make the decision to close all the park restrooms. We had been keeping them open, just thinking that people would still be using the parks and would need them. But as the situation evolved and our thinking evolved, we do want to take that measure. We don't want people congregating in parks. We don't want picnics and barbecues and the like happening. Even group sports, as hard as that is to discourage, it really is what needs to happen right now. And so we took that measure to help people refrain from grouping together in parks. Jumping to the next category of
Aaron, I was going to suggest that
yes.
since there are 10 categories, if you go through all 10 and then we take council questions and discussion about all 10 at the same time, it may get a little chaotic.
Right.
So, let me suggest, if there's not an objection, that we at least get a chance for questions, maybe comments as well, but at least to make sure that we don't lose these as we press through. This one, I know this one's generated quite a few questions in the community and that sort of thing. So if there's no objection, why don't we take them up each of the buckets one at a time? And
sure.
so Councilmember Guerrero?
Yes, I'm sorry. So which category are we on at this point that you're taking questions for?
Number 1, emergency response.
And for emergency response, I do want to add at some point that the HR federal legislation, HR CARES Act is going to be passed, I think, tonight, which will include funding to provide protective gear for our firefighters and police officers. If we can explore that, to be able to draw that down and see what we can provide for them.
All right, I think we're okay. Are there other questions or comments in bucket number 1?
Oh, well,
Mr. Ledesma?
yeah, this is Councilmember Ledesma. Thanks, Aaron, for the update. What have you heard from so far working with the county in terms of the amount of response? I know closing the parks was a big step from kind of the status we were on, but tell me if you can expand upon a little bit the coordination level with the county health office and the other emergency service or emergency operations going on around the county. Is this consistent with what other parts of the county are doing in terms of starting to ramp up a little bit more enforcement?
Sure. Where this started was the day the order went into effect. A lot of this, like with everything right now, we're evolving as we go, and in some ways kind of making up the process as we go. We haven't dealt with something like this before. So on this particular topic, on that, I believe it was on Thursday, we sort of realized right away that, hey, there's going to be some of these that aren't that clear, that are sort of gray areas, whether it's a question about a business that may be in the construction business, but not in terms of on-site construction, but they're in the pipeline. Lots of questions that may come up like that. And so we realized that we didn't want to be in the position to be making those determinations either on our own, but also on a kind of staff person by staff person basis, which could have happened if we didn't centralize the communication and protocol here. So So we jumped on that right away and said, hey, it really makes sense to have a dedicated staff person to handle all the inquiries and the communication with businesses and frankly, the enforcement too. But the piece that we needed to link up right away was the coordination with the county. So we reached out to the county administrator and also the public health officer and established that protocol. So I think this is what's being done in the other cities. I can't say that for sure. But as far as I know, we were one of the first in Yolo County to reach out with that protocol and lay it out very clearly. So I think it's been working. I forgot to mention, or maybe it's in the report here, that we did add a topic to West Sac Connect. And then also we have the code enforcement hotline that will be available or is available to receive these questions and complaints or concerns. And that information is going to be put out more to the public tomorrow. So far, we've gotten a fairly light call volume or report volume, but that could ramp up once we advertise a little more.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not at all opposed to the actions at the park. I'm just trying to understand the kind of how you're interacting with the county and making that decisions. And obviously, I think we at least being around and noticing congregating that may have been happening, that was the necessary step. Again, I'm just trying to get a sense of your coordination, the team's coordination around the county about those types of actions.
Yeah, I mean, on the business operations and the determination of essential activities, it's a little easier, but on the park activity, that one, we feel like that's just the right thing to do when you have groups that are using the parks when we're trying to implement social distancing. I don't know that in West Sacramento it was such a big issue as you saw in some of the other parts of the country in California, like at some of the beaches and things like that. But the thinking is really no different. And state, as far as I understand, is now regulating parking lots of state beaches. So they're not closing the beaches, but they're trying to do things to discourage the type of group activity and extended use of those facilities. So it's really no different what we're doing with the parks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the state is closing parking lots at state parks as well. Many other cities have done the same thing. Sacramento today issued the same playground guidance that you issued, Aaron, Monday. And so other cities are coming along. I think the direction of where the order is going is definitely going to get tighter, at least at the state level. You know, maybe faster than the county, because the state definitions and the state interpretations are becoming more important just because of the flow between the county lines, and the governor's been very clear about the gatherings in parks and other facilities. You know, the order in some sense is actually quite clear about this already. All that we've done, all that you've done, Aaron, is lend a hand in terms of helping people comply with an order that already said you may not. I mean, we often like focus about what is this define, what's this definition, what's that definition, but the order, the most important part of the order says you may not leave your home except for the following thing. And if the following thing is not on that list, then you are not to leave your home for it. And so, so the order doesn't say, no, I can't go to a birthday party at a friend's house. It doesn't say that specifically, but it does say, I may not leave my house to do something like going to a birthday party at my friend's house. That's not one of the activities that is an exception under the order. So that's why the order hasn't had to change that much, even as the interpretation has gotten tighter. San Jose today just opened a hotline for folks to report businesses that are remaining open that are not supposed to be open. So it seems fairly clear that the direction, not just in California but around the country, is for increasing levels of enforcement and increasing levels of fidelity to what the order already said. And I think the approach that you've taken, Aaron, has made good sense of being sensitive to what the needs are, but really fundamentally the biggest need here is to get that social distancing and to end the kind of congregation that we've been seeing that's happening everywhere. It's natural. Even folks that are like going to the beach for the weekend from here, that's not an allowable activity, and it's causing the beach counties a significant problem of the influx of folks. So I think it's been a good step. And I saw the order today, or the advisory today on parking that he issued, which was probably disappointing to some folks, but reinforced the parking restrictions that we have in place. But I think I've been participating in the Bloomberg Harvard John Hopkins Medical School network of mayors, and also in communication with the state government on a daily basis. And it's very clear that these orders are going to get tighter, and the extent to which we can continue to help folks comply for all the right reasons with them, that we'll be able to get a handle on this. And of course, what we haven't mentioned yet, and which I know is later in the report, but really underscores this, is that we now know we have cases in our community. And it's not as though we weren't taking this extremely seriously before, but to have multiple cases in West Sacramento is just a reminder that the virus is here. It's not a policy debate really any longer. It is a matter of imminent threat to public health and safety, and we've got to take these measures, which, while problematic, pale in comparison to the amount of real death and disease that we may be facing if we don't take them. So thanks for all your work on this, Aaron, and for West Sacramento's been in the lead on many of these issues by a couple days at a time, usually. Not being nuts, but also being firm and deliberate about making sure that we're fully protecting everyone in our community. Are there other questions or comments on this first item? Councilmember Roscoe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to commend staff for the communication, and this is the work of the OC. So special thanks to all of you, because I think that the channels are being shared. I know that several council members have also gotten involved to make sure that the communication has transcended throughout the city. And I think people are hearing it loud and clear. I also wanted to address and thank staff, because there's a portion of the report that addresses the matter of childcare. I mean, we come from a two essential employee household with multiple kids, and so this was a real big scare initially on. Luckily for me, there were some changes that did allow for that to be lightened up. But I've been hearing from folks that that don't have the same luxuries, and I know that we're still looking into that. But should it become an issue, I appreciate the being kept informed about the coordination with Yolo County to make sure that those folks who are required to be out of their home and don't have any other assistance, that their needs are being met.
Mayor Pro Tem Sandine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And following your request, this is Beverly Sandine, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you. I wanted to commend our city manager and the whole EOC team and all the staff at city. I think this report will be really helpful and guide us. And I just have a question about its structure. And I know there's a lot of coordination that's been mentioned between the county and us, and also, of course, our school district and us, the state and us. I just have a question for the city manager about the structure in terms of, will we find most of those interactions in the emergency declarations and action section, or will they be throughout the report? I just feel like I think the most complicated part of us dealing with this is not only the actions within the city, but it's the interface with others and making sure that that we're actually accessing support, financial support, and all the other staffing support from all the agencies, and that we're all in this together. So I just didn't know, in terms of the structure of the report, if you would just find that throughout.
Yeah, sorry. So I forgot to say, this is Aaron Laurel, city manager. I'll just say that once. So yeah, the emergency declaration section was more meant to be a summary of all the things that led up to this point, and the major actions by the different levels of government around emergency declarations. The coordination, the specific coordination actions between us and other entities. The way I organized, at least for this initial version, is sort of sprinkled throughout under each topic. But what I would plan to do going forward is as we add new content to this, I may highlight those sections just to bring attention to them. Many of them will involve other agencies. I tried to, in the table format, focus on only including the items in the table with the dates that were actions by the city, but they may involve other agencies as well. But then if there's other agency updates, that would be under the bullets under each topic. So some things that are being done at the federal level or things that are out there that we're tracking, you would find those there. So I should have mentioned that at the beginning. That's kind of how the report's structured.
Thank you.
I also wanted to point out, just kind of relating back to Councilmember Ledesma's question about the restrooms. I'm reminded by our emergency services coordinator, Brenna Howell, that there is the county level EOC, and our EOC and their EOC have been in communication with one of the goals being consistency among how things are being applied. That's not always going to happen on the first day, but I think what we found is that by the time these protocols get put into place and they work, they tend to get replicated in the other places in the county and even across the river. So I think that's just going to be how we expect things to go. We didn't come up with everything first, but we've been trying to create these processes that work for us, and hopefully they work for the county as well. And so far, I think that process has been working pretty well.
Councilmember Guerrero?
I just want to, can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
I just want to say thank you to everybody on the city administration, to all the other city council members. I think what has been done just in the short period of time to ensure the safety and the well-being of our community has been extraordinary. And it's been done so quickly, and communication on our website, the city's website, and those among our community members continuing to share and spread that information has been well done and achieved, so that folks understand what is going on. I think communication and having information about what to do and how to prepare ourselves, and in a time where we have never been through this before, sheltering at place, it totally goes against who we are as human beings, and having to wonder what's next, what's going to happen with our lives, what's going to happen with our jobs, is how long is this going to last? And these are all questions that we here on city council cannot answer, but at least try to provide some level of support, whether it be sharing information or whether it be encouraging people to apply for the services that are being offered at the state and federal level. So I think everything you all have done to pull the resources together and just to keep the city going. I think that being on the front line, city government and all the employees, it's not like you can go home and relax. I think you are 24/7 on the job, and that's what happens when we have an emergency situation. It's going to be the city and your collaboration at the state and federal level and at the local level with the county and our schools to ensure that we meet all the needs and and address the concerns that our city is raising. So I just want to applaud everything that you've done, and just continue to work on this, and also rest and take care of yourselves too, because this sounds like it's going to be a long haul. And I do have questions as we go into other areas, as well as Councilmember Karina mentioned childcare and the homelessness and other things that I think will go down as we go down the agenda.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great. Terrific. Well, thanks for those were also some good opening. We didn't really have a chance for council members to make opening comments as well. So that was terrific. And I just to put an exclamation point behind, well, all the comments, but Mayor Pro Tem Sandine in particular, the comments around our partnerships with other agencies, particularly our most central partnerships with Yolo County and with the Washington Unified School District have been stellar. I mean, they're both grappling with lots of interruptions of service and everything else too. And the relationships and the trust and the communication, the sharing, the joint operations and everything else that we've engaged in with both of those agencies, just as an example, over many, many years of cityhood has really paid off in this situation where we've been able to operate seamlessly and really focus on what's best and needed by our residents. All right, Aaron, do you want to take us on to item number 2 then as we go through the other 9?
Sure. Yeah, and just a quick note, we do have ongoing, very close coordination with both the school district and the county. So, for example, Yorgos Kasanis, who's the school district's PIO, he actually is on our EOC calls. And then, of course, the EOC staff talk daily with the county EOC. So this report is not meant to capture all of the activities of all the other agencies, but where there is the overlap or coordination, I'll try to make sure that those are included as we go forward. Okay, so the second topic is about the organization's continuity. Not just, we're focusing on core services, so public safety, maintenance of critical infrastructure, and the emergency operations. But we're also trying to keep regular business going. So to that point, on March 18th, when the council ratified the local emergency proclamation, we did go ahead and figure out how to conduct these meetings now on a weekly basis. Looks like the streaming is working too, so that's good. On March 20th, I think it was around March 20th, the rec center staff really under their own kind of ingenuity began offering remote group exercise classes. And so those can be streamed live or watched later. And I know I've just heard from some people that use the rec center. They really appreciate what's going on there since you can't actually go there to work out. So today we're doing our first council meeting with the new procedures. I think Mayor outlined everything earlier. We'll get into that. A couple other operational tidbits. So the Public Works Department, Public Works Operations and Maintenance, they've managed their shifts to minimize the amount of overlap and contact between staff. So they're now on shifts instead of all being there at once. And then the managers are also staggering their shifts just to ensure that continuity. And then similarly, the police department will actually be moving to a different shift structure going forward to decrease overlap and reduce the risk of transmission, and also to preserve reserve personnel as much as we can as we go through this. So in terms of the other issues, just want to address the childcare topic. So I've mentioned this before and I'll say it again. The first thing we were concerned with when the schools started to close was that issue. Really asking ourselves and all of our departments, can we maintain core services, and how much of an impact will it be if people have to stay home to take care of their kids? And that was before we knew most of our staff was going to transition to telecommuting. Now that that's in place, I can speak from personal experience. It's not easy to telecommute when you have kids, but we're all learning that it can be done. But for the ones that are in those public safety departments, public works department, the ones that have to be present, and we're going to rely on them through this whole thing. We did take the extra work to inventory our staff to make sure that we can be covered with all the shifts without having the impact of needing childcare. So this is different than say Sacramento. So Sacramento, you all probably saw that they started a free childcare program mainly focused on their employees, their first responders and other essential employees, but they also opened it up to hospital workers. From what I can tell, that program doesn't require Sacramento residency. I could be wrong about that, but in terms of hospital workers that reside in West Sacramento, I don't know how many are taking advantage of it. And frankly, we haven't really put it out there either, because that would probably require us to check with Sacramento first. But that's the area I think if there's a concern going forward, it's really about is there something that we might consider to help hospital workers that work in Sacramento keep going to work, and that's where the childcare issue may come up. It also could come up if we get into a situation where we start to see impacts to shifts and our own employees. But for right now, I don't know that I would recommend doing what Sacramento did, but it's definitely something we're going to be tracking. It would be nice to get better data on the hospital workers piece, but maybe I'll throw that back to the council to see if there would be interest in that and how we might go about doing that, if you have any ideas. So I'll pause there. That caps off the second topic.
All right, Councilmember Guerrero.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did chat with the Sacramento City's staff regarding the need, and they are growing quickly. I think they went from one day to the next, 150 requests for childcare. They don't know if it's going to meet the demand, but they said they will be expanding locations. And these are current childcare providers that closed, but then they reopened and they're using some of their own facilities. And I asked if there was any unmet need that we can work collaboratively on. And one of the areas she described was the infant and toddler program. They don't have the resources for that, and that she's heard that there is a need to provide additional support in that area. So if we're looking at maybe bridging our resources, if there's something we can provide as far as what she said, they will need like maybe a childcare provider who is providing that in their home or in a location. I think there might be somebody in West Sacramento that does infant and toddler services. If they're willing to open and accept for that age group, that would be helpful for them.
Councilmember Orozco.
No, I appreciate those comments. Do we know, Aaron, sorry, this is Karina Orozco, City Council member, if there are any infant and toddler childcare services that are currently open in West Sacramento right now?
I know someone on staff does. I don't. I don't know that that person is on the call, but that's something we can definitely follow up on. And then kind of to both that question and Councilmember Guerrero's point, one thing we are doing that's actually in the report is our early learning staff are working with the Yolo County Child Care Planning Council. And the idea there is for daycare or childcare options that are still open, how can we give them guidance and really focus their efforts on first responders and hospital workers, essential workers. So that's something I think we can get more information on and report back next week, if that's okay. But it's something I know that there is some ongoing efforts.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad this has been highlighted as an issue, and because much of the emergency has been focused around the need to protect the healthcare workforce in the event of the surge, and that's what we're talking about right now. But it is just as important to protect the other essential workforces that are difficult to replace. So as an example, we all depend on clean water coming into our faucets and our showers at home, so we can wash our hands for no other reason. But water treatment plant operators and scientists are not. There's not millions of them, and so we're the virus to affect either directly or the family members of key personnel at the water treatment plant. Just as an example, that piece of critical infrastructure could be in danger in terms of having appropriate personnel. So when the range of people who are critical when we all are to be sheltering in place is a big one, and the city's a part of that. And so the work that Aaron and Amanda and Luann and Roberta have done to try to inventory where are we at, I think is really important, and making sure that we don't end up in a situation where we have any kind of outbreak among any of those teams that are so essential to basic services in the city. For the hospital workers, I mean, I think this question that was raised at the end about, well, what are the slots that Councilmember Orozco asked, like what are there slots available at all? Is the central one, and I know, as you said, Aaron, Justine and her team have been leading on this with the county. But the issue for hospitals right now isn't that they need cash from little cities like ours in order to support childcare for their workers. What they need is somebody to deliver the childcare services for their personnel. And so, we don't have the discretionary resources that the city of Sacramento might have, and even the package that's being considered in Congress right now will send money directly to Sacramento, and it will send virtually nothing directly to us because we're not a city of 500,000. So we have to apply for all the different funding sources, whereas Sacramento will have a lot of flexibility. So we're not in a position to be able to copy everything that Sacramento does because we just don't have either the raw dollars or the flexibility around it. But if the issue is could we get Sutter and Mercy and UC Davis and other hospital systems, if they see this as an issue for some of their workers, would they be willing to support financially the slots if we could find places in the community where parents who are medical personnel could place them. So it seems like that role that we can play to connect and to network and to leverage those slots is probably more important than if we were to come up with a $5,000 fund that would somehow serve 55,000 people in the city. So really kudos to Justine, the work that she's already doing, but just to add on to what both Councilmember Guerrero and Councilmember Orozco have already said about the importance of the issue. Councilmember Guerrero?
Yes, I wanted to add that in, HR 748, which is being taken up, there is about 3.5 billion in CCDBG funding for the essential workers, which is our first responders and healthcare workers, and about 750 million for Head Start. I don't know exactly how that's going to be allocated out, but in addition to that is taking a look at providing our childcare workers guidance to ensure that that they are teaching the children or teaching the instructors, the teachers, to make sure that they are complying with the social distancing. And LA County is working with our public health officer, Dr. Ferrer, in establishing that guidance that I'd like to share with Justine, so that we can see if we can apply that citywide, among those that are currently providing the childcare services and those that may be coming on board to deliver these services as we move forward.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Ledesma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Councilmember Ledesma. And Aaron, I kind of echo what the mayor just said around, are we in touch with the hospitals, the healthcare systems, in terms of finding out if there are needs for childcare that they have that would be unmet. And I think that would be my only kind of directive. I think that probably is an important part we can play. And again, just because we just don't know. And I know the folks at the hospitals are strained, and I know somebody in the healthcare hospital system, and we're hearing that quite often. So it's something we could probably connect up really quickly. Just kind of let us know if we need to engage on that.
Great. And the Child Care Development Block Grant funds, those $3.5 billion, those are funds right now. They're being allocated directly and exclusively to the states, and then from the states likely through counties and other big cities. So we'll see whether we were able to qualify for any of that if we offer services directly. But it looks like there will be resources in the system, even if they're not resources that we can tap directly. All right, Mr. City Manager, ready to move to item 3?
Yeah, I'll just mention on that last topic, we can start, I think the work's already being done, but starting with the inventory of childcare facilities that are still offering services in West Sacramento. And then, I think the rest of the conversation was helpful. It's something we can kind of focus in on, and how do we get them to prioritize, incentivize, or bring outside resources in through the healthcare organizations to make sure there's capacity for definitely hospital workers and other essential workers. Okay, so moving on, the third topic is communications. It's a short section, but it kind of, it's a lot of what we're doing right now is about communications, education of the public, getting them to not just take the order seriously, but also finding ways to communicate support for businesses, support for residents and other people dealing with the impacts of this. So we mentioned last time we do have our webpage that gets updated daily. We also have been putting out a lot of information on our social media platforms. We did inform the public that there, as the mayor mentioned, there are confirmed cases of COVID-19 in West Sacramento. And we actually have been doing some targeted communication to certain populations in order to hopefully prevent some of the clustering effect of some of the outbreak issues that we're seeing in places. And so part of that is producing materials in ways that can be distributed not through social media, but that can be done through phone calls and just getting those talking points really clear, focusing on bilingual resources as well, both Spanish and Russian in our community. That's really important. So we've been working a lot on not just the broad communications and broadcasting to the greater public of West Sacramento, but also to specific communities within the city. So like I said, we've been doing daily updates. We'll keep doing that. You've seen probably some of the mayor's short videos that have been focused on different topics of how to manage through sheltering in place and supporting local businesses and different things there. I also want to get a plug for the city's email alert system. I think a lot of people are signed up for it, but maybe some of the people watching at home may not be aware of it. So in that attachment, there's a hyperlink to it, cityofwestsacramento.org government, or I'm sorry, /government/email-alerts. You can sign up for email alerts there and get additional information beyond what we're putting on our COVID-19 website. So I'll pause there, see if there's any questions or feedback on what we've been doing on communications.
Yeah.
Councilmember Roscoe.
Thank you. Karina Roscoe, City Council member. Thank you, Aaron, for that update. I'm wondering if, I know we've done a decent job at making sure that our communications are, getting distributed and disseminated throughout the community. However, I mean, this is kind of an unusual time, and I know you had touched on it about alternative ways of communicating these messages, but there are some very big stakeholders in the community, whether that be churches. Mainly, there are a lot of churches that have very large membership rosters, and to the extent that we are making sure that our communications are targeting, we well with the West Sac Chamber, with our other partners, but there are small enclaves of people in the community that I really hope are getting this message. I mean, we are all trying, all 5 of us, and promoting as much information as we can, but it'd be very nice to know that we have a direct connection with a lot of these groups. Could you give me any idea, or give us any idea as to whether or not we are getting to those folks?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the adaptions we're quickly having to do here. And I really want to give credit to Paul Hosley, our communications media officer, who's using every minute of his time to do this work. But also on that topic, just the other day, we realized that, kind of to your point, there's a large Russian population in West Sacramento, obviously, and there's very close-knit community. But a lot of that population, and there's others like it in the city, don't necessarily get all their information from the City of West Sacramento website, and a lot of people operate that way, understandably so. So what we did with that particular community is we quickly put together a list of key leaders that we knew of and others knew of, and started direct outreach to those people. I can't say that we've covered everyone by any means, and there's definitely more work that I think we can do in different segments of the community. Like you said, there's a lot of different enclaves in West Sacramento. I think what I would plead to the community is, if you are one of those people that are well connected and know of groups that may not be, whether it's easy to reach by our standard ways of communicating, or that aren't, following our Facebook page on a daily basis, get in touch with us. And Paul Hosley, is available. We can get the information and build those networks so that when we have important information to put out, especially urgent information, we can go more direct to those networks that have their own phone trees. So hopefully that helps.
Right. No, that's fantastic. And that would go even to the question of who has, childcare for infants and toddlers. I mean, to that note, I mean, I'm sure that there's somebody watching this meeting that might know of the existing providers and to a lot of these questions. So thank you for addressing that, Aaron.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Sandine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Beverly Sandine. I think this is an area that we should be really proud of. The communication, I think, has gone very well from the city, and there are definitely ways that we can talk about getting into even more communities. But I think all the messaging that's been coming out from all the different places, state, federal, county, other organizations, I think folks want to rely on what we share, and I think having a standard time or a standard format, I think, is really useful. I just want to ask the city manager about the resourcing of this area when it's so important, and feel that having Mr. Hosley, I think he's you, with the mayor, with the EOC, I just want to make sure that we, I know there's some staff that are on admin leave. I just want to make sure that that's a strong area, because it's going to be over and over and over. This is a daily activity. Just want to make sure that you feel comfortable in how it's resourced.
So on times when we're not in an emergency like this, I feel like we're well resourced in that area. But I will say, I think that's a great question. It is a concern of mine, just because I see how, and this goes for everyone really, but how hard people are working right now, particularly in that area, because we only have one city PIO. We do have other departments that have people with that skill set. You know, our public safety departments are they kind of take over that when needed. But yeah, I mean, I can't say today that that's an area where I feel like we have a lot of redundancy. And so as we go forward, I think that's something to think about. Like I said, this is a daily thing. We have to be on communications more than anything else. Paul's doing a great job. But yeah, I mean, I do worry that it may be an area that we need to look at resources going forward. We do have people that can back up, no doubt, but it does take some technical expertise also. And so that's something we can definitely add to the list to make sure that we're planning ahead.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you know, and I think, as the Mayor Pro Tem is highlighting, that we have staff that cannot work remotely, or whose functional areas are at least temporarily suspended. And you know, to the extent that any of them might be, it's possible to give them the opportunity to cross-train to support the work that Mr. Hosley is doing, and particularly back him up in case he becomes unavailable for some reason, that we're not having to instantly train someone in a discipline that requires pretty quick. You don't get a long training period in the public communications and information side of the house during a situation like this. Great point. Councilmember Guerrero?
I just want to say just the great work on the website and being a resource to the community. I have tapped on it and provided links and information on, for example, the eviction moratorium. That's a big ask. And I know I saw how you immediately put on our website the recent announcement of the banks providing mortgage relief, and knowing that that it's not just for those that are renting, but those that are owning the homes that could be impacted by that as well. So just the immediate publication of information and the speed is working very well. I just want to thank Paul and the team for being and continuing to share on your other networks. Is continuing to get that information out quickly to the community. So thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah. Mayor Pro Tem Cindy, did you still had your hand up? Did you? I thought it might be a mistake. Okay, Councilmember Ledesma.
Thank you, and this is Councilmember Ledesma. No, I just want to note to city staff and Aaron and to the team and to my colleagues as well. Everyone has done a phenomenal job communicating out to the public, and the city particularly has been pretty much on it, very proactive, positive, but very clear about the expectations during this time. And I think that's just really important. I think at the beginning of the first item, the mayor pointed out that the instruction is stay home, and I think we've been pretty clear about that. But there still is a way that we've managed our communications to the city through the social media posts or tweets. That's been positive and encouraging and empathetic, but very clear about what the expectation is and what we need to do to protect public health. So just want to say thank you to my colleagues. I know all of you have been very active on social media. I try to peek in and see how things are going, and just want to thank you all for being out front and trying to provide or boost the communications that are coming from the city and other sources. So thank you.
Yeah, that's terrific and so important. I also really value both the tentacles that the council has that we've used in various parts of the community and different ways of communicating that reach a lot of people, but also just the the maturity and the collective spirit in which that work is being done. This is all, we're all in politics and whatever, and that's not been the situation at all. Nobody's been out there, chasing ambulances and holding press conferences every other minute, but really trying to focus on making sure that we have clarity of message. And Mr. Hosley and I've been working with him, and we're working really hard to try to apply the best science around communication psychology to make sure that people get the messages that they need to get, that they are encouraged to comply. They also don't lose hope, that they see possibility, they can connect to the services, and the entire team has been terrific. And then one question, Aaron, for you, and that I know that we use the Everbridge notification system the other day. My question, the question I had was about Pulse Point. Pulse Point's the app that we joined through the fire department that sends out notifications to subscribers on it. Any resident in the community can sign up for it, and then they get a notification. They list what kind of skills they might have in CPR or otherwise, and then you get a notification if there is an event near you where you might be needed or might know. Obviously, that has different kinds of implications in a situation like this, where you can't necessarily just rush over to somebody's house and you don't have the PPE equipment or anything else. But are we still participating in Pulse Point during this period? And if so, are we taking any? Are there any changes or precautions or protocols that are being put in place to make sure that it's effective and also safe?
Okay, I'd like to call Fire Chief Steve Vins up to the virtual podium if he's available to take that question.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. The fire department is still participating with Pulse Point. It's ran through our dispatch center, but fortunately, Pulse Point won't notify a citizen if the emergency is in a residence. It'll only notify citizens if they're in a public place, like the Nugget or a shopping center. It doesn't notify anybody if the incident's taken place in a residential house.
Do you know, Chief, whether or not Pulse Point is implementing any protocols, given the social distancing requirements and the risk involved and the liability involved, but the risk involved to both whoever might be experiencing an event in a public place and any good citizen that is trying to help? Are there notifications or other sorts of things on Pulse Point that they're implementing that will assure that we're not sending in folks into more jeopardy than they may already be experiencing?
I would be speculating. I haven't noticed a change with Pulse Point, but I can definitely look into it and report back to Aaron.
Great. Well, thanks so much. All right, Aaron, shall we proceed to, I'm sorry, Mr. City Manager, so we proceed to fiscal planning and readiness, number 4? Sure,
and just to close that point, we will get more information on if Pulse Point's doing anything different, but I can say our understanding of the way dispatch is even being handled, as calls come in, it's not immediately clear this is a case, may involve, may be related to COVID-19. So we're kind of having that challenge across the board, but Pulse Point is definitely something we can check with them to see if they're implementing any protocol for users there. Okay, so on number 4, fiscal planning, the most important thing immediately for this is to make sure that the city, now that we activated our EOC and declared an emergency, that we began tracking expenses that are potentially reimbursable from either federal, state, or even county sources in some cases. So related to that, just yesterday, the EOC staff prepared a letter, and I signed and submitted the letter, which is known as an emergency declaration concurrence letter. It gets sent to Cal OES, and I believe they then go through a federal process to get it approved. And what it does is it makes the city eligible for financial assistance from any of those relief sources that are listed in that item. So that's an important step in the process, and it just reemphasizes that as we go through this and we have to spend money on things that are related to the relief effort or the response effort. In the 3rd bullet point under other considerations, you can see the list of things that are eligible for reimbursement, and it's very expansive in terms of what we can claim. So we'll be doing that as staff are out doing things and having to procure things, including motel rooms, for example. We're making sure that we're logging all of those expenses so that potentially the city can be reimbursed. Other than that, a lot of the financial issues that we're looking at are longer term. So I know Roberta is starting the process of doing some financial modeling, which at this point is very much a crystal ball because we really don't know how long this is going to go, what the real impacts will be long term, sustained impacts on things like sales tax and property tax. But we can definitely make some guesses and different levels of conservative approaching for modeling and just look at, kind of worst case scenario to an ideal scenario. But what that means though, there's a bunch of different impacts. The biggest ones we can think of immediately, we can look to CalPERS. So CalPERS lost a lot of money recently. And it's not quite to the recession level, but and their financial position is much different than they were back then. But as you all know from experience, when CalPERS loses money, it means bad things for cities. And so that's an impact that we're going to be tracking a lot, very closely. And of course, the other parts will be projections on sales tax, particularly property tax, just because we do receive a share, a good share of the property tax. So the impact could be profound on especially the EIFD, Measure G, those sources that are reliant on property tax. So we do have the budget coming up. Every city does, so we're not alone there. And it's just a reality. I'll tell you right now, the budget's going to be late. The good news is that we're on a midterm cycle, and we're going into the second year. Normally, what happens is we just do supplementals for that second year, and so departments have been working on those. But I think they're going to temper their expectations about what can be done given the current situation. And we'll do our best to meet the time frame, but we may just go with the already approved second year of the budget until we're able to get to council with the full supplemental list and until we have a better picture of where things will stand financially by that time and looking ahead into next year. So any questions or feedback on that topic?
Councilmember Ledesma.
Thank you. Thank you, Aaron. This is Councilmember Ledesma. Just thank you for the briefing on this. I know there's a lot of work ahead. Will we be seeing some reporting on sort of the expenses you're tracking, the costs? This is actually, do you plan on providing us with some at the month end or at some point, just so we can have some visibility towards the costs that is we're actually going out of pocket?
Yeah, so you mean on the emergency operations side? I mean,
on all of it. I mean, right? Because
okay.
on the stuff that is reimbursable, just to get a sense of the scope of what we're talking about.
Yeah, if I could ask Roberta if she's available to chime in there, both on the reimbursement tracking, but also maybe I know she's making some plans for when we might try to offer a budget update if you're curious about that too. So Roberta, are you able to chime in here?
Yes, I'm here. My husband just walked out, so you might hear my daughter calling me. So we are working very hard to start getting information as far as projections and actual expenditures actually being charged to the emergency and how those might be reimbursable. Right now, it takes a little bit of time for things to get through a process and actually hit our financial reports. So we're estimating as best we can for now. We are working on some updates on revenue impacts and other things, and I hope to get at least an initial update at the next council meeting next week. And so yes, we can provide monthly updates as information comes in as far as where we are with reimbursable costs. I also plan on bringing something to the council to get an appropriation when we have an idea of how much this might be costing us in the near future.
Okay, thank you, Roberta.
Councilmember Guerrero.
I have a few questions. Aaron or Roberta, I'm not really sure who would know, but some counties are allowing waiver of late fees for payments of their property taxes. Is Yolo County one of those counties?
I don't know. Do you know, Roberta?
I am not aware. I don't know the answer to that, but we can find out.
Okay, because that might delay getting a revenue from the property tax if people are asking for a waiver, so that they don't pay a penalty. And then, Roberta, I do recall when you did a presentation and you showed, you know, a budget that if we had a really, you know, bad recession, for example, are we in that ballpark of that type of recession, or is it worse?
Well, right now it's really unclear. I know if you see a lot of the things that are being posted, you know, globally, looking at even nationally what this might do, it's unclear. This could be a short blip and we could come back and be fine. It could just be, you know, a 3-month thing. Things could just be delayed. Vacations and things that are having to be canceled now could take place in the summer or later on. It's really unclear at this time. You know, our initial sales tax projections, for example, coming in from our consultants show that we're expecting as much increase in revenues for Wayfair and other recent decisions as we can expect for a 4-month impact of, you know, business closures for coronavirus. So information is still very much changing, and we're not really able to tell long term. I think for the short term, we're definitely going to have an impact, but we're also very well situated with reserves and other revenues to be able to withstand a short-term impact.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Roberta and Aaron. This is one reason why we're, you know, I know we've gotten several requests, maybe hundreds of them, from folks who are hoping that we'll be having a grant program for this or a new grant program for that, and or that we'll be making grants to nonprofits or to individuals. Or we're not in a position at this point to do that. We likely never will be, but we certainly aren't right now. We have all the first order effects that you've just described, in terms of you know, an almost certain effect on our CalPERS rates at some point. You know, some of the projections already have been, you know, quite scary in terms of just the effects. So you know, so far. So we have that first order effect. We have the actual costs for things that we weren't planning on doing before, things that we're spending more on because we're having to spend them on an emergency basis in a tight market than we did before. And then we have all the revenue implications, since sales taxes are such a significant part of our revenue for everything, for basic services, police and fire and everything else, but also for Measure E and Measure N and Measure J and Measure, you know, levy funding, transportation funding, early learning, the whole thing are heavily dependent on sales taxes. And so losing those revenues, even in the current year, as you say, we have some buffer, but we can't afford a sustained loss, and we can't afford many of those companies going out of business or leaving the city or cutting their operations in half, and we just don't know. So we have those first order effects. Then there are the second order effects of what, you know, other things that are happening in the global economy, changes to entire industries that may not be here any longer. You know, some of the you know, now that we're doing meetings like this by Zoom, and many other industries are moving to full, you know, video spaces and whatever, some entire sectors may disappear. And if they're headquartered here, that has an impact on us too. So property taxes takes a little bit longer for it to affect us because of the assessed valuations, but we're also heavily dependent on property tax too. So and the relief packages that we would normally expect in a disaster from FEMA or from others may not be what they would regularly be. One, because the entire country is facing this at the same time, so there isn't the other 90% of America ready to support the relief effort like they would for Katrina or for, you know, a hurricane in the Northeast, or for an earthquake. It's everywhere at once, and every single place in America is counting on the same level of reimbursements for expenses and impacts as we always have, and there may not be the resources to do that. And we're already seeing that tonight with the bill that's in Congress that appropriates a lot of money for the airline industry and others, and a decent amount of money for government, but it's really very little will get to us. And almost none of it, other than I think $2 billion nationwide that will go out by formula to community development block grant city entitlement cities, which we are because we are over 55,000 people, plug to fill out the census, please, everyone. But other than that, all the other money is going to other agencies and to other parts of the economy and the government. And in fact, even things like paid leave, cities are being explicitly and expressly told that they cannot qualify for any of the federal aid on paid leave for employees. So the systems that we're counting on to provide a safety net for the city may not be there. And so, we are stronger than most cities, even though we're not richer than most, our people are not richer than most cities. Our city government is on a more solid financial position through a lot of, tough planning and hard decisions and then good business revenue. So we wouldn't be the first city to fall into the ocean, but we also cannot act as though it's business as usual right now, and have to be very prudent about the decisions and the commitments that we're making. And we don't right now. We've got to hold together the core services that people are depending on us for, in terms of police and fire and water and roads and everything, and transit and the other key elements. But say the other fiscal threat to us at second order is that in order to pay for all of the federal relief packages and also to deal with the state's very significant tax shortfall, because the state's so dependent on capital gains income taxes, and no matter what, capital gains are going down for this cycle. That just as in the last recession, the recession hit us hard, but what hit us even harder was the state legislature's actions to deal with their part of the recession. So the elimination of redevelopment saved the state $1 billion, and it cost us everything. So we're going to have to deal with both the direct issues of the crisis, then the economic consequences to our residents and our businesses and our property owners, and then we're going to have to deal with how the state and the national governments are also grappling with their budget shortfalls, because when it hits them, it rolls downhill to us. So it's just I know that council has been very strong about fiscal prudence and strong fiscal management. And this is just to put an underline underneath that we're able to be solid and stable because of that practice in the last several years. But it's going to be even more critical that we maintain that kind of fiscal discipline right now as we're meeting the challenge of the epidemic. All right, Aaron, you want to take us to number 5, which is housing and homelessness?
Housing and homelessness, yeah. So as you'll recall, last week we adopted a moratorium on evictions of all tenants, residential and commercial, when the reason is due to COVID-19 impacts. So we now have information on our website and have been putting that resource out. I think we also at least translated it in Spanish. We may have done that in Russian yet, I'm not sure, but I know that's in the works. And so I can't speak to the utilization of that yet, and it's pretty early, but the council did authorize that through May 31st, which is when the governor's executive order is good through. And we do plan to revisit that in April with you if we need to make any adjustments. So on the topic of homelessness, this is an ongoing thing, but really want to commend Mark Sawyer, our homeless coordinator, who has done a great job of jumping on the issue right away, of identifying the most vulnerable of the homeless residents in the city and working to secure them temporary housing. So that's been a countywide effort. We've been coordinating with the Health and Human Resources Agency. There's a little bit of confusion about, who's sort of leading this. There's the initial governor executive order and direction that we want to use hotels and motels to house homeless, and that kind of got interpreted in different ways. In our city, we're focusing mostly on the people that need it the most at this time, the people that we need to isolate, that are vulnerable medically or are over 65 years of age. So what Mark has done is going property to property, dealing with motel owners that are typically very reluctant to do things like rent blocks of motel rooms for particularly homeless housing. We learned that as we went through the Bridge to Housing experience. But he has secured 25 rooms to date, and the numbers are in here. Of those rooms, we have 22 of them occupied, so we do have a little bit of capacity left. I think there's other capacity out there in case we need more, but that's how we've been approaching it. It's been more of a a precise analysis of who actually needs it, as opposed to we need to tie up hundreds of motel rooms and house every last person we can. Not saying that we won't end up there, but that's how we're approaching it right now. We have been coordinating with the county, and we got clarification. It's noted in one of the points below that they are very much looking to the cities to coordinate this effort. They may have resources available to help. If we get to a point where there isn't capacity in other cities, they haven't ruled out the potential need to have homeless from other jurisdictions housed in other cities. I don't think we'll get there, but we are tracking that because obviously we don't want to become the place that is the answer for everyone else's homeless issues. We're trying to take care of our own. There's enough capacity from my analysis in the other cities to utilize motels and hotels if needed. And so far, that's what's happening. The county has been very good about offering resources should the need arise to house a block of homeless individuals in one property, much like we did with Bridge to Housing. So we're not there yet, but we'll continue on the mode of having Mark secure rooms as needed and house people that are most vulnerable. I want to address while we're on that topic the 30-day tenancy issue that's brought up in one of the public comments, because that's actually something we're looking at. So right now, I think you're all probably familiar with this. In California law, if a person is in a let's just use a motel example. If a person is in a motel for more than 30 days, they are given tenants rights, which means they're subject to the same eviction process that someone in an apartment would be who's on a lease. So for that reason, that it's part of why you see people out on the street on West Capitol Avenue after 3 or 4 weeks. Part of it's because when their Social Security income runs out. The other part is because they only are leased motels for 4 weeks because motel owners want to avoid that 30-day rule. I don't know at the local level that we have an easy answer for that right now. I know our city attorney is looking into it. As of today, this afternoon, we had a quick exchange on that. So we are looking at the issue to see what can be done, but I think this is also something that is probably best addressed in the statewide level because it is a state law after all that creates an issue. We are looking at it on the local level also in terms of our emergency declaration. A couple other notes here. I believe Councilmember Guerrero mentioned this earlier. Foreclosure moratoriums is something that came up in the context of our eviction moratorium. Since last week, there's been a couple of different things that happened. So the federal government announced that any mortgage that's backed by, that's an FHA mortgage or that's backed by Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae will suspend foreclosure activity, I think, for 60 days. And then today, you saw the announcement that the 4 major banks that hold a lot of the mortgages, Wells Fargo, Citibank, JP Morgan, and US Bank, instituted a 90-day grace period on mortgage payments. So that'll help a lot on that front. I don't believe there's any exceptions for people that are owner investors. That's something we can look into. But that's kind of the update on the overall topic of homeless and housing.
All right, and as I agree, we had to make, and I've reached out to the governor's office as well initially about the 28-day issue because it is, as you said, poses the disincentive. It's one of those laws that was put in place that had a pretty immediate unintended consequence of causing folks to get pushed out of their housing because the consequences of converting into tenant status were so severe, both for the motel owner in that particular case. So if St. Vincent de Paul, for example, since Tony Creighton with St. Vincent de Paul was the comment that we received tonight, if organizations like that were to join in a request to the governor's office to say yes, if at all possible, if the governor by executive order could suspend that provision, then we would be better able in this crisis to persuade motel owners who don't want to convert into apartment owners to be able to make their rooms available in the time of crisis. So I think we'll need that. It would be very helpful to have even a tiny coalition to make that initial case. Okay, Councilmember Guerrero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Guerrero, I wanted to ask a couple of questions regarding that 28-day rule. I believe that that is one of the reasons why the state was offering to provide support, technical support, and if we asked. So and I understand also in a conversation with council, Yolo County Council earlier today, that they're willing to provide some support for that. It's something that I had raised with them. They had a conference call. And so in part of the discussion, they were aware of that being a barrier, and they do want to ensure that there's continuity of sheltering and not moving around individuals from place to place, so that those that are quarantined are not moving around and impacting others that could possibly be infected. So it's really important that we get that addressed right away, whether it be, getting one of the motels and pretty much saying, we're going to lease the whole motel and we need all these spots here in this particular motel, that they're willing to pretty much sequester and, take ownership of that for the period of time that is needed. I think that local jurisdictions are given that guidance. And I think we need to, try to do what we can to reach out and find out what are the steps we need to take to make sure that that happens as soon as possible. I think, allowing that opportunity for their being, I think we're coming up to that deadline. If they're in shelter in a motel right now and they do become infected, I'm really concerned about the impact that would have in our motels if such an incident occurred, because it would diminish the spaces that we have available. So whatever we can do to address that right away, it's, I think, really important. And also taking a look at, the situation where I see that you have a number of people that have been sheltered. And I understand that there are a lot more, at least there's a need for 10 more individuals that are asking for motel places. And I'm not sure as far as the criteria, but I understand that the criteria is, somewhat met and not, but can we just take a look at providing that support for all those that are requesting it at this point in time? Because I think that there's some additional people that are requesting to be sheltered, but that they're not, that they've been told they cannot receive it.
Okay, let me try to address that, and we've got up a couple issues. So for one issue we're looking at with the tenancy issues right now under the executive order from the governor and under our emergency declaration, it goes to the question of who is the tenant. So if the state, county, or even the city took over a motel and effectively became the manager, well, then that maybe that addresses the issue. That brings up a slew of other issues, though, because now we're talking about a bridge to housing like scale that I don't think we're really prepared to do right now, because that has impacts on our ability to provide responses to medical calls and law enforcement calls, because the call volume when we did bridge to housing was very significant. So we're not quite ready to go that route, but it would address the tenancy issue potentially. The other option on the tenancy issue is that if the person leasing the motel is someone other than the homeless individual, say maybe it's the county or even the city, that could also mitigate that. So that's something I don't believe we've quite explored yet. And I'd want you to know on that second issue, if there are people that need housing, that's really what Mark Sawyer is doing right now. He's identifying who those people are and doing his best to secure motel rooms. So if we get to a point where we understand the capacity just isn't there to address what is substantiated as the need, then we'll have to think about maybe some heavier handed options. But for right now, just in the last week, he's gone from, I think, securing 10 rooms to 25 rooms. And I think doing a good job of identifying the people that need the housing the most, that are in the most vulnerable of the populations medically and that are senior citizens. So I don't know if that addresses your questions, but that's kind of the status right now.
Thank you. Yeah, and unfortunately, we will get the CDBG dollars from the feds in this case, but other stuff we will have to wait to apply for to the state from. And similarly, while Los Angeles and Sacramento have direct access to the money that the governor has released for housing homeless individuals, we do not. All of our work has to occur through the continuum of care at Yolo County, and Yolo County doesn't receive very much money under those formulas in the first place. So I'm really appreciative of what Mark is doing, more or less as a one-man solution in this space, given the capacity that he and that the city organization has, given the resources. And it's been pretty remarkable the number of folks that he's been able to connect to housing that's there. But yeah, the continued cooperation with the county, and then as these resources do start to hit from the federal government and the state government, and they hit places other than us, we just have to be prepared to go get them. But until we have, we don't have the resources to mount the massive work that I think we would all like to see happen at this point, and we're gonna have to be ready to go grab those dollars. Anything else on this one? Okay, item 5, business resilience and recovery.
Hey, thank you. So again, just to update on what was done since last time I mentioned the eviction moratorium. I won't go into detail on that again, it just other than it applies to commercial tenants as well. I did participate in the Chamber of Commerce board call today just to give them an update on a lot of the topics we're talking about this evening, although I only had, I think, 10 minutes before we had to start the EOC call. But the Chamber has been a great partner, both with Denise Stomke and her board leadership in leading with trying to be a resource to their members and to all West Sacramento businesses. Our economic development and housing department, a lot of the staff that were working on and all the projects that we had going and hopefully we still have going just a couple of weeks ago have sort of shifted focus to this topic. And so really our role so far has been to be the best resource we can in connecting businesses with the state and federal aid that is already available, but hopefully more is on the way. And I think we'll know more about that topic once we are able to fully digest the stimulus package that is hopefully getting approved tonight, assuming it's helpful in that topic. So in terms of those resources, we do have our website. And we talked about that last time. It has links to all of the programs that have been set up in the region and that were already existing. I think Councilmember Guerrero mentioned last meeting, the State Treasurer's Office has a resource list, and I did link to that in this document. And it seems to be a helpful inventory of pretty much everything out there that's available. But also, I don't know if this was in place by the time we did the last meeting of the Sacramento Metro Chamber of Commerce. Through partnerships with the local chambers and some of the cities have set up what they're calling a rapid response hub. And that's a website and I believe also a call center that is able to give businesses advice about managing through this situation, both in terms of labor issues, but also other topics like financial assistance and loans and things like that. So I did also make a note here of local financial assistance programs. The one, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but in Sacramento, they did set up a $1 million fund where they're making loans to no interest loans to businesses. I don't know if you saw the news on it, but they got literally thousands of applications and not sure how they're going through that process. But I think it's kind of case in point for us. We have a lot of businesses. We have over 5,000 businesses in the city. And it's not just the number, but it's also the variety of businesses that we have. We don't scale with that in terms of the resources the city has to be able to make a meaningful impact on a program like that. And I think Sacramento being of its size, sure they can do some of that, but I think they're also going to have a very hard task of now having to weed through the applications and pick out the ones that will ultimately be funded. So it's not something I'd recommend we do until we have a much better understanding of the federal and state resources that could become available. And in the meantime, we continue to be the best resource we can to our local businesses and support them in every other way that we can locally until we learn more. So that's the summary on that for today.
Questions or comments? in this area? Mayor Pro Tem Sandine?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Beverly Sandine. I do think it's important to continue as you are, Mr. Laurel, and for our city to be working really closely with our West Sacramento Chamber of Commerce. I've noticed they really ramped up their communications, and I think it's important for the business community as much as it can to know that we have advocates through our chamber, and then of course the collection of other chambers, and to continue to offer and share the resources that are being made available in the state and federal level. So I think whatever we can do to help communicate that and echo the communication to the chamber, I think that'll be important. It's a really hard time right now.
Councilmember Ledesma.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Councilmember Ledesma, and thanks, Aaron, for the briefing on this. This is obviously an important part of our community. Not only do the businesses provide the fabric of our community, but they employ a lot of people, and they move goods, and they provide services to our community. And so this is a problem happening all over the country, and communities are trying to help deal with it. I will say, and I think having spent the last couple of weeks sorting through what's coming out of the federal level, there will be significant support coming at the federal level, including small business loans available through banks. They're also doing through the Small Business Administration, as you talked about before, disaster assistance type loans that I think the chamber has made people available to. I think the area of opportunity, and I'm happy to expand on that more for staff or anybody that's interested, being very close to that activity with the SBA in Washington. But I think the area that I'm seeing in terms of where the city can play is garnering technical assistance. I did have a conversation with our chamber president, Denise Domke, and this happened 10 years ago, 12 years ago, during the last recession. There's just a tremendous amount of need for technical assistance in communities. Small business owners, as they go toward a regular sort of track towards expansion or growth, it's measured, it's on their time frame. They can take their time educating themselves to getting to a state of credit readiness, so that when they're ready to get financing or get capital, they can pace themselves and when the opportunity arises. This is different because literally an event has caused a cessation of activity, a suspension of the economy, and it will require amount of assistance, which I think the federal government's trying to address and making sure businesses can pay bills. But the recovery will be just as important, and that so technical assistance. There was funding opportunities for entrepreneurial development in the stimulus package that's going through, hopefully passed tonight. And I think that's a real opportunity where the city can find its way and maybe working through those avenues to find grants. I know we've done that before, but I think it's probably going to be even more necessary now. Again, I think what you're going to hear about over the next few days as this passes is the readiness of banks like the one I work at, as well as others, readiness to provide financing to help get business owners through the next few weeks and months. But there really will be a kind of a restart necessary. And I know they're already talking about a phase 4 of that coming at the federal level. But I think technical assistance is somewhere just by way of how can we as a city get involved. And we've done that before through CDBG grants. We've done it before through other areas, and working with the chamber, I think, is a really good opportunity. And again, as I learn more, happy to share that with staff, and hopefully that can set the right direction for our city and provide good resources.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ledesma. And Mr. Ledesma has been, in addition to working really hard on this at the local level and the community level, has been a critical national leader in innovation and making sure that the kind of federal policy changes that can happen do happen, and they really work for communities like ours and for businesses, large and small, like we have in our city. So we're really fortunate to have his leadership and his advocacy for us in that venue, but also his expertise back here at home. So, Councilmember Roscoe?
No, exactly what you said, Mr. Mayor, Karina Roscoe, council member. I just want to extend my thanks for your leadership, Councilmember Ledesma. Early on, I was receiving lots of communications from local business owners, as I'm sure the rest of our council has. And right away, Councilmember Ledesma had already been in contact with several sources back east, and he's been on top of the issue. And I just appreciate your leadership and keeping us all apprised of all of the resources. Thank you.
Councilmember Guerrero.
I just also want to thank our chamber. They've done a great job in organizing and providing information to the community on the restaurants, the restaurant business being significantly hit, as well as other smaller businesses, but in helping to preserve the business and also providing resources to the community. Encourage anybody who's listening to continue to share that information, to get gift certificates, get food to go. It's all really good food, and just want to continue to encourage everyone to participate. And thank you, Councilmember Ledesma, for seeing what we can do and looking at what we can provide as far as resources. I do know and have heard back from community members that a loan can be difficult, and getting a loan means you're gonna have to pay it back at some point. So I know that that's probably not the best solution, and the ideal would be to continue to purchase from our local businesses in a way that we can continue to sustain them in that way.
All right, thank you. I also want to shout out to the chamber, both for what's already been said and also for their work with us and on behalf of the community, just on these policy issues. So, last week, West Sacramento was one of the first to adopt the residential eviction ordinance, and the chamber was supportive of that ordinance. They recognized some of the challenges behind it. So did the council in refining and improving that ordinance. And we were, I believe, the first one in the region to adopt the commercial evictions ordinance, also with the support of the chamber. So they've been critical partners in being advocates for business with us, but also, as they always are, rooted in the clear understanding that business survives and thrives only when there's a community underneath and behind and with it, and vice versa. And so it's been a tremendous partnership, again, built on generations of cooperation and collaboration and trust. So thanks so much to the chamber, and also apologies to the Economic Development Department. I knew there was one department I missed at the beginning when I was listing off all the great departments and all the work that they've been doing in this situation. Economic Development was the one I did forget, and they're doing really critical work, both here and when we get to the real estate item later on there as well. All right, Aaron, item 7, food distribution and social services.
The department I came from.
I know.
Okay, so food distribution and social services is another broad category, but a very important one at this time. So I can't cite, that there's been a lot of direct city actions, but we are definitely supporting what's happening out there. The one that we were a little bit involved with was the food bank conducted its weekly food distribution on Saturday. They were able to use City Hall. Apparently they've had some struggles in getting sites in the county, given what's going on. A lot of places are closed. So we did have them set up in front of City Hall, and I went by there just to observe from the building, just to see how it was going. It looked like it was orderly, and the event went really well as far as I could tell. I know a couple council members were there as well. So on a related note, that effort has been key to keeping the food vulnerability issues that a lot of disadvantaged and senior citizens experience is a big part of what they're dealing with the social isolation that's required by the shelter in place. And so the sustainability of that system is very important. Now that raises the question of funding. I know you got a lot of public comments on that topic tonight. Before I address the food delivery issue, I'll do that last. The first thing I want to bring your attention to is there is an effort countywide to set up a fund that would be available for all sorts of response efforts. That fund is being coordinated by Yolo County in partnership with the Yolo Community Fund. The County Board of Supervisors, my understanding is, I believe last night or maybe it was on Monday, they approved $250,000 to initiate that fund, and they're working with healthcare organizations and other private entities to build the funding. It's very similar to what Mayor Steinberg is leading in Sacramento. So that's something I know that we'll be asked and to contribute to. We haven't gotten all the details yet, but I know that's coming. There's supposed to be a call set up later this week. So I want to just highlight that for the council. And then on the topic of food delivery sustainability, that is an area that could be approached multiple ways. Thus far, the food bank or none of the other nonprofits that are active, I believe Meals on Wheels is still active, have made a specific request for sustained funding during this time. I think you're aware the food bank had made a request to all the county cities and the county some time ago for kind of general operations funding. But specific to the COVID-19 response, there could arise a need. Apparently, they've been working through their reserves to do the activity that they've been doing. So whether it's through direct funding from cities or something that could be handled by the Community Benefit Fund once it's set up, it's definitely a topic that is going to be important to sustain that effort. So I'll turn it to the council if there's questions or comments on that or direction.
All right, thanks for that, Aaron. And she may weigh in on in a moment, but this is an area where our Mayor Pro Tem has been very active in the countywide collaborations, both right now and for many years at the Yolo Basin Foundation, but previously led the Yolo Community Foundation, has a very good understanding and network of both the needs and the institutions and the arrangements and the resources that are available and the players and who's effective in all of that throughout these systems. So we're lucky to have her as part of the council as well as we make these connections. And the food bank distribution was terrific on Saturday. A lot of folks were taking advantage of that, and obviously depends a lot on the volunteers to make that happen and the donors for the food itself and for the food bank. I do think we need to help counsel them a bit more on social distancing at the event itself, just as this is the case in many markets and inside restaurants that are doing takeout and what have you. It seems it's foreseeable that a future version of the health order will ban takeout that isn't curbside pickup or something equivalent. And so getting ahead of that issue and helping folks in our food system, restaurants in particular, but others in the food system that aren't currently tooled up to be able to handle an arrangement that doesn't have people coming into the physical facility. I think we with the chamber and others ought to, giving people that nudge that when that order happens, it may happen overnight, and it will be a quick adjustment. And so I'm helping in that regard. The other part of the system that is our urban farms and the Center for Land-Based Learning and our other partners in that space as well. I know they've been doing work in terms of their food boxes and other things that are out there, but maybe in a future week, if we could get if you could give us an update about what's going on in terms of that portion of the food system as well. Also, a shout out to our grocery store partners in the community. We're very fortunate that Rayleigh's, obviously headquartered here, plus the Nugget, plus Arteaga's, as well as the food portions of some of the larger stores have really stepped it up, both in terms of their making sure that they have the necessary supplies, providing particular hours for seniors and other folks who are particularly at risk to shop with less exposure, to focus their restocking on the most critical issues, encouraging the appropriate social distancing, and discouraging hoarding of critical supplies. We've had some really shining examples in our community of grocery stores and supermarkets that are doing it right. They're learning along the way as well. Not everything's perfect in any of these domains, and they're experimenting and learning too. really, I think we're lucky that we have a set of stores and shoppers that are trying to figure out how to do it right in our fleet. Councilmember Guerrero.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Martha Guerrero. Wanted to add that I think what we experienced in the YOLO Food Bank, initially the social distancing was a bit challenging, but they had 3 truckloads, and in each truckload, they provided a different way of distributing the food. And the last one was a boxed, boxed groceries. So it provided some different food items in a box where people didn't have to select from different boxes and go through a line. And I think that process helped immensely in that social distancing. And that was towards the end in that 3rd truckload of food. There was quite a demand and a lot of concern among people as to when the food distribution would occur. And that's because we've had closure of all of our food pantries here in West Sacramento. And that's because a lot of those that are delivering or supporting that effort here are retirees. There are people who really are in that age range that really cannot be out there exposed. And so I want to applaud YOLO Food Bank for what they've achieved over the years. First of all, doing that immense capital, fundraising effort and getting all the different funding from the various organizations, Yochadehi and the county and different other, for-profit organizations, healthcare organizations. And that revenue, that resource has established where we are today, our most critical service delivery for our community, which is food and nutrition. For those now in a situation that they're shut in, and we probably would not have been able to foresee where we're at today, but here we are. And it is pretty important for those that need to be quarantined to not be out in the community, to not, feel like there's a desperate need to get food. And so I understand that there's been a triple number of people that have asking for that food to be delivered. There are quite a few people in our city who are immune compromised, who have medical conditions where they cannot go out and grocery shop. And even they may have the financial means and they're probably contributing to the YOLO Food Bank, but that delivery into their home, it is something that is providing them with the additional support and comfort so that they don't be at risk, especially now that, that we are in our city, we have some members of our community who have the coronavirus. So in providing the support for YOLO Food Bank, I think is pretty critical at this time. I don't foresee us getting out of our situation right now. The shelter in place, I understand from what the governor stated, might go as far as June. And unemployment, I understand that the unemployment is going up. The Employment Development Department has received about 1 million applications. And from what I understand, they're not going to be able to deliver checks a little in time. So there are going to be people without any funding. There are people that were immediately laid off when they were informed that they had to close the business. So those are a lot of our members of our community that were pretty much living from paycheck to paycheck and are just not going to have that funding to be able to provide food for themselves or for their families. Very thankful for the school district providing the school meals. I think that's incredible. And I understand that there's a federal package to provide additional funding for the school districts to continue that food distribution. I have seen that they are providing 3 meals a day, and very thankful for Starbucks, who I understand is providing an additional, I think, protein pack as part of that meal plan. So, appreciative of all the grocery stores, Mr. Mayor, as you described, those are, all of our partners here in the city contributing. And as we learn, finding ways to be more resourceful and providing the health and well-being for our community. So I do want to see what we can do to support YOLO Food Bank, because I don't see that certain members of our community are going to be reemployed right away. It's going to be a lag time. And as Roberta described, our economy is not going to get that much better so quickly if businesses close and them trying to reopen it. And what Councilmember Ledesma said, it's going to have to be a restart. So in order for people to be able to sustain themselves at this point, I think the YOLO Food Bank is going to be critical to provide that additional support for our community. And one more thing quickly, sorry, I forgot to add that YOLO Food Bank is understands that we may be able to get reimbursed if we provide a contribution. We may be able to get reimbursed by the federal package that is being considered either tonight or tomorrow. So if we can take a look at that, Aaron, I would really appreciate that.
Mayor Pro Tem Sandine.
Thank you, Beverly Sandine. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to commend the Board of Supervisors for establishing this YOLO Community Benefit Fund and working with Yocha Dihi Wenta Nation and the health systems and working with YOLO Foundation. As has been stated, we're very reliant county on all the partners we have, and I think the nonprofit partners that we have are so important. Like the food bank, Empower YOLO, Habitat for Humanity, Center for Land-Based Learning. I think the list is long, and establishing a fund like that brings a light on the importance of the nonprofit community. And just like businesses and just like members of our community who be struggling through this, nonprofits rely on the generosity of others. And so when the community is hurting, the nonprofits typically also struggle. And this is when we need them the most to be providing resources, food, shelter, clothing, safety, social services. And so whatever we can do as a community to shed light on this fund being developed, and that we figure out how to access that for the nonprofits that we have here that support West Sacramento. I think we need to do what we can to get the messaging out about the importance of the nonprofit community to the city.
Councilmember Orozco.
Karina Roscoe. I echo those sentiments. I actually had a great benefit of being part of 2 different food distributions for the city. And I was really proud to see how the YOLO Food Bank and YOLO County Children's Alliance coordinated the volunteers at our last one. The instructions did change. I mean, as more information was distributed and there are more protocols in place, there were ways of getting food to those folks by not having human-to-human contact, and leaving the food at the doorstep and calling later to just instruct the recipient that the food was there. Of course, there are language barriers and whatnot, but needless to say, folks who answered and ended up getting their products. I think the problem here is that now with the shortage of folks that are able to volunteer, and because of the spread, you have fewer people that are there to deliver. But I do also wanted to say that, the school district did really step up. Had a chance to go to Westmore Oaks today with my little boys to check it out and to express our appreciation, and in the process recognize all of the workers out there that are spending their time making sure that our children are served. There's a lot of negativity, a lot of fear. But today we were able to get independent study packets from Westmore Oaks, and we're not students at Westmore Oaks. These are people taking care of people. So in the worst of times, the one thing that is just extraordinary is the display of humanity and connectedness that we are all showing for one another. And that, especially at a time when there's so many folks that want to disconnect and are being told to disconnect, that we still find wonderful ways to brighten each other and shine. That's all. Thank you.
Well said. Councilmember Ledesma.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Chris Ledesma. Just thanks to the Washington Unified and to all the volunteers over the past week who's really stepped up, as my colleagues have stated, very well. It's been noticeable but most importantly, it's necessary. And I think we tend to forget how much we depend on our schools how much we depend on these services to get meals to touch folks, and it leaves them at this time even more vulnerable. So just my heartfelt appreciation to all those organizations, volunteers, our partners at Washington Unified for providing those services. Just really proud of the community, the way they've come through. I do have a question for the city manager. In the outline of the proposal, or at least I'm not sure if you're asking for a proposal. I think has there been a formal ask for contributions to the Yellow Food Bank, or is there just conversations about that? I just want to know if that's something that we will, what the specific ask has been, or will we see that in a later agenda item at a later date?
Yeah, so just to break that down further, so the Yellow Community Benefit Fund is just getting started, and they're supposed to involve, I think, this week about what the ask might be of the cities, because I know that is an expectation. And that's something I would recommend that I get that information, and then I don't know if it'll be ready for the next council meeting, but definitely the one after that, we bring that back, looking at what we might contribute. And then on a related note with the food bank, yes, there was a previous proposal from the food bank that it had different iterations, but the one that was most current, and it's fairly in the scope of things right now, it's fairly old. It was from 4 or 5 months ago. It was a countywide proposal for, I believe it was about 100,000 from each city to support their ongoing operation. That again had nothing to do with the COVID-19 response and their current activity. So what I would suggest is, before we take action on either one, we get the information about the Yellow Community Benefit Fund, get more information about the intent of that fund, if they're already considering part of their aid delivery incorporating the food bank, and then go from there, since those are two related things, if that makes sense.
It does.
Okay. I want to thank y'all for giving kudos to the school district. In my haste, I was remiss on this section to mention that they had been ongoing serving all the lunches to children. I really commend their preparation for that. I think the superintendent and her staff did a tremendous job of the readiness, knowing that they were making preparations to close and set that up. So as far as I hear, it's going well. So I just want to recap. I don't know if there's any more comments on this topic before.
Yeah, I do. I want to just say on the food bank issue. Although first, I want to also pile on the great work of the school district. We have a regular meeting of Mayor Pro Tem Sanding joined this meeting as well last week, of the mayors, vice mayors, county board chairs, and school superintendents and school board presidents. And Washington Unified is really shining across the whole region for its kind of steady preparation, its readiness. When Washington Unified had to close schools, it was ready to go, both in terms of food and the learning packets and everything else, the continuity of education. And the district has done everything that they are legally allowed to do, and then probably a little bit more, to make sure that everybody could get more than just the required school lunch and maybe the breakfast, or that somebody could pick it up even if the child wasn't in the car. You know, some of the rules that are in place that can make it challenging. Washington Unified was one of the first ones to bust through a lot of those barriers, and they're really the anchor of the food system right now for the most vulnerable in our community. On the food bank piece, I want to be the voice of discipline and restraint on this as well, as we consider this piece, because even last week or even the week before that, as we've been taking issues up, so many systems are in danger or falling apart in society, and that's affecting our community. And we see the governor, we see the president being able to step up with $8 billion here or $2 trillion there. And we want to do, because we care about this community that we live in, we want to be there for it and every one of its needs, which we know we can't do all those things. But we want to, and that's part of what makes our West Sacramento so terrific, and why the council and the city government has been so effective. But the provision of food and the general welfare is fundamentally a county responsibility. That's what's in state law. And it's a significant change of mission for us to take that on. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't, but I just want to, I have to keep reminding myself that next week, something else will have failed. It might be the health clinic. It might be something entire. Last week it was, we're not sure, we're unemployed. We may not qualify for unemployment, or unemployment won't be enough. We'll be kicked out of our house. And so we're like, well, maybe in addition to evictions, maybe we should have a fund to help people pay their rent. That came up at last week's council meeting. And between then and now, the federal government is adopting a package that will send everybody $1,200 plus support through unemployment to cover that. A lot of the systems have to respond as well. And so we see the need first because we live in it, but we also have to be prudent with the very limited dollars we have about which one of these massive problems we take on at a time. So I'm not opposed to supporting the food bank in this regard, but we're going to be experiencing these demands in a variety of different domains. And if we spend all the money now that we don't have on the food bank alone, we won't be here when it's homelessness or something else that is going to desperately require our attention. It's one of the reasons why I do support looking at the YOLO Community Benefit Fund as a way to say, look, we need to take all those kind of requests need to go to this one fund that's countywide. We will have to make this decision, but we're going to contribute a portion to that fund. But we are not inviting a request for proposals, from every possible need in our community for grant support. We're not a foundation, and we don't have the resources, and we have to protect the dollars we have to make sure that we can still turn on the water and the fire truck is still going to arrive. And so will the police officer if something goes wrong. That's job one. So I'm supportive of moving forward with looking at that fund, hopefully as a way for us to deal with some of these issues, but do it in collaboration with others, and also in a way that doesn't imply that we are forevermore now going to be providing, the baseline core support for the nonprofit organizations that are operating countywide. We just can't. The unfortunate truth is we don't know whether we can afford it. Right now, the only safe bet is that we cannot. And so we're going to have to approach this with some discipline. So I think the approach that you're taking, Aaron, given what the council members have all said, every single one of my colleagues tonight about the importance of the food bank and its contributions and the need, that looking at that fund and bringing back something either next week or the week after is at least one good way of starting to approach that. And of course, everything might change. Maybe by next week, it'll be clear that's, we need to put $500,000 into the food bank, and we'll borrow it from somewhere else. Who knows? But I think at this point, I'm personally would rather that we look at the solving the systemic issues that Mayor Pro Tem Sandin has described about the nonprofit systems, and include the food bank in that.
Okay, so if that's the consensus, we'll get the funding request details from on the YOLO Community Benefit Fund. We'll tie in the discussion about the food bank. I'm sure it's already happening at that level, and we'll bring that back. In the meantime, we'll also check in on the status of our urban farms. We will also follow up on the suggestion from Councilman Guerrero about getting reimbursement for food bank assistance or food security assistance. I have a couple other notes too. So if there's nothing else on that one, we'll move on to the next topic, which is our real estate development services. And this could have easily been folded into the continuity of services issue, but it does have some unique potential response actions, and it's a big part of what we do as a city. So I decided to separate it out. And so the only thing I'll highlight here, we don't have to do anything tonight, but we could, use a little bit of direction here. And I know the staff in community development and probably economic development are already thinking and hopefully, starting to work out some criteria for what we would do about entitlement extensions. There are some questions about state law, how that impacts things, but I think what we're going to do is start with the analysis of projects that are impacted or potentially impacted, and come up with some reasonable criteria, like are they active projects for starters, and then suggest some ways to provide some relief there. So if there's any council direction, we appreciate it.
On to this one. Mr. Ledesma.
Thank you. Hey, Aaron, what are you hearing by way of county services, permitting at their level impacts? And I ask because, you know, I think with the shelter in place, there's been a lot of questions around the ability for what kind of services remain for a city. You know, I got a request around, you know, even contacting economic development last week for a business that was actually looking to grow. But also get feedback around if they need a permit to do something maybe in the future, or is everybody still sort of trying to operate? Is it just limited at that level?
Do you mean specifically the county functions that we sometimes rely on for
Yes.
as part of the permitting?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know particularly either if John Robinson, I think, is on the line, or Katie Jacobson have any information to share on that. Otherwise, we can follow up when we open it up to them, though.
Well, I think they can.
Okay, take that as a no.
And neither of them is unmuting, so that's telling.
Yeah, and that's fine.
I think
yeah.
if they could, it's just maybe something to assess and bring forward just separately in one of your reports. And I think there's been general questions about what kind of business can be done. Somebody wants to get a project started. I'm sure those that are in the realty business have asked about. They've been affected because of appraisals have stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Some won't do interior appraisals, and that's kind of put kind of at risk sort of those transactions that are kind of in midstream or were to be completed here soon. So again, I'm just kind of curious to what the capabilities are.
Yeah, and we'll be more comprehensive on the response to that, because you know it's not just Yolo County. You have the Sacramento Regional Sanitation District and you know, other agencies, even the school district, for things like fees. I can speak to our staff and our operations. We are doing our best to not just continue to process permits for projects that were already in the pipeline, but also to provide limited inspection services to the extent that it can be done remotely or through social distancing. I know that sounds weird, but our staff are being very creative about how they're getting information from contractors to look at things like inspections that are done by, you know, video and photos, and also some limited site visits when it can be accommodated. So we're doing everything we can to not slow things down. And this is another area where overnight, certainly things could change if the order got more strict about construction. Right now, it's kind of inclusive of construction being an activity that's allowed with proper social distancing. But yeah, that could change in a day. So on the topic of entitlement extensions, if you have thoughts on that, otherwise, I think that at this point, we just want to hear consensus, if nothing else, that that's an area that you'd like us to explore further.
Yeah, I know I'm supportive of what you've written here, which is you know, entitlement extensions based on criteria, and the most important one being, were you actually going to be building this anyway, right? That I know some jurisdictions have said, oh, we just want to extend all entitlements by a year, and that's not smart. You know, with the right criteria, to me at least, it makes sense to for folks that aren't already under construction or don't have their, you know, they can't get a construction loan right now for obvious reasons, that we provide extensions in that period. For those that are under construction, I just you know, just to emphasize the point that you made, that inspections really matter, and everything that we can do to help those projects complete, I think is worth doing. Certainly, partly because of the order, partly because the workforce is currently available, and to the extent to which they have construction loans that have to be completed, they may not be able to pick up that easily later on and complete their project. So I think in those cases, inspections, we should do everything we can to make sure that they're not the critical path barrier towards the completion of the construction projects that we have pending. But yeah, on entitlements, I think you're exactly right. Okay, Councilmember Guerrero.
I just wanted to add that I support what you're recommending here, Aaron, as far as looking at granting extensions. There's definitely a lot of that going on because it's going to be really difficult for staff, city staff, and folks that are out doing the job to, it could be for a variety of reasons to be able to meet the deadline. So if we can do that, I don't know what it is we can do to achieve that. Just let us know. I think it's a real helpful recommendation, and I appreciate you bringing that to our attention so that we can contribute in a way that is meaningful to those that are seeking that support.
All right, how about number 9, transportation and mobility?
Sure. And on the note of development projects, what I can also do, I can't promise this in the next meeting, but I'm sure a lot of you have questions about, hey, what is the status of this project now that we're in this this scenario? And I can try to get the best I can a status check on both development projects and also capital projects that are underway at a future meeting. Okay, so transportation mobility, this is more of a status check-in. I think you already know that VIA had reduced the number of rides, but they also are contributing to the food delivery system by piloting a program with the food bank, and some of our staff started it. I believe that program is still going, and trying to make sure that we can utilize VIA to the full extent possible, as they're not giving as many rides right now as it is. Similarly, YCTD has adapted its service. I had put some stats in here about how much they're down in ridership, which is not surprising, but they're down 85% on their fixed routes, and a similar number on paratransit. They did make some operational changes to the routes, which are detailed here, schedule changes and dialing back service. But also they have 3 paratransit vehicles that are working at the county EOC level, both in terms of food distribution, but also being made available for a resource for homeless individuals for food delivery. And I think that's it at this point, but they've also talked about transportation for homeless as well. So I'll continue to report on that. And then as you know, JUMP is suspended right now. And I believe the whole fleet is off the street. There was some talk about restoring some limited service for people that were dependent on that to get to work, especially essential workers. And I don't know exactly where that stands right now, but last time I checked, which was this evening, I did not see any bikes or scooters on the app. So, so any questions on that topic?
Guerrero? Oh, sorry, Councilman Ledesma, this is your, you were in first and your YCTD. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Aaron, for pointing out the work that YCTD has done. Terry's and the team really stepped into the EOC role. And unfortunately, last week, I think I mentioned at council that we were expecting changes in routing. They hung on for the rest of the week, but you saw the drastic drop as of Thursday and Friday that they had. But to the team's credit at YCTD, they've gotten more involved, as you noted, with they have gotten involved in the food bank, but they're also maybe assisting with health and human services and other delivery needs, such as medicine and a few other areas. So again, it's difficult because the drivers there, like everybody else, they're trying to sustain their own income. So we'll have some choices to make at the district board level, and trying to keep everybody employed and paid as we kind of wait through this to see where it goes. But more importantly, to find other helpful uses in the community, and that's really helpful. So just want to thank you for highlighting them, and thank them directly for the work they're doing. I will say the drivers are and I know this has been noted, but they're out still driving the community. Some of them are requested masks, but again, they're doing their duty and again, trying to help people around. The other part too, Aaron, is that I asked Terry at YCTD, the executive director, to really keep an eye out for with the reduced service, is for those who still need transit services. It's hard to see the unmet need in the times like this because they cut service, and so he's gone out of his way to make sure they're manning phones and taking care of customer calls in case one of these cuts results in a person trying to get to the job that they still have to show up to. I mean, in my industry, we are still an essential service, and people are required to be in an office, and it's a hard thing to ask in this environment, and we're not alone. But again, if the city hears of, as we talked about earlier, hospital systems or hospitals that need workers to get there, it's important that we get that feedback back to Terry so that if there's a route adjustment we can make, he can make that, and he has the authority to do so. Anyway, I just want to get those 2 points out there. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Guerrero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Martha Guerrero. Just wanted to applaud the fact that the Senate did approve, the $2 trillion package tonight. And I understand that it included was possibly $25 billion in aid for the transit system. And if we can take a look at drawing it down collaboratively with Sacramento, maybe through SACOG, and trying to establish a transit system that maintains the public health and safety of the individuals that are using the transit. And, we're going to have people that are continuing to use it for, medical treatment, access to other essential services. So there's definitely a population in our community who does rely on the public transportation system. But if we can be able to work in a way that is more efficient, so that we can maintain that, as Councilmember Ledesma is exploring that. Let's see what we can do to move that forward. We have an opportunity to do that now.
All right. Any other questions or comments on number 9? And number 10, senior citizens and youth.
Okay, this one is not one that we really see all the impacts yet, but we know they're there and they're coming. And this is one of those areas we might help with planning. And I'll talk about that in a sec. But one more immediate thing that we have already noted is this is around the time of year where we start to get together the home run program and summer steps internships, both in the city and at private companies in West Sacramento. Obviously, that's not going to be feasible in the moment, but our staff that staff the home run program, as well as our HR division, which puts together the Summer Steps program, are thinking of ways to keep those programs going, even if it's on a delayed basis. It's harder to do that for high school students, but perhaps for college students that participate in the program, we can run it as soon as we can start it again, to do recruitments and all the work that has to go into setting it up, so that it goes beyond the summer potentially. And also they're looking at other things that maybe can happen in the interim around topics like digital badging. So not a lot of substance to give you tonight, but just that's a topic that I feel like, and we as staff feel like we've been involved in doing programming and efforts to combat isolation of senior citizens, but also give opportunities for our youth. And this should be no different at this time. We just have to get more creative and do to adapt. So if you have suggestions or any feedback on that topic, we'd appreciate it.
Councilmember Guerrero.
Yes, one of the areas of concern for our seniors right now, and it's not going to be just next 2 weeks or maybe next 3 weeks, but it's going to be a long term, is looking at ways for us to be able to provide the resources directly to their home. I anticipate that there's going to be a lot of concern about going out into the community in the near future unless we have a vaccine for the coronavirus. And so they will be susceptible. That just doesn't include them, but it includes all those that are immune compromised in our community. So taking a look at ways to, that's one of the benefits of Meals on Wheels. But now I see the YOLO Food Bank doing the same thing, is providing the direct delivery, is that you have somebody who has some contact doing a check-in with those individuals that are most vulnerable and in need of some level of connection so that we can check in on them. And there's something that we can take a look at providing that resource. And for our youth, you know, the Teens Collins Center and our rec center being closed. I understand that there's some ways to connect with them either through what we're doing here, using our teleconferencing. So finding creative ways now, and you know, I don't know how long this is going to last as far as being in the shelter in place, but looking and touching base, you know, with Tracy, I'd like to hear from her as to what her ideas are, but also Jose from the Teens Collins Center on what we can do to provide a resource for the population that he serves as well.
All right, anything else on item? Aaron, thanks so much for the like ridiculously comprehensive, smart, detailed, forward-thinking report, and of course all the work that's underneath it. And also to our executive team, which normally we can see in the room with us, and they are all of them are on the phone right now. And you know, it's been a long meeting for a teleconference, but very much appreciate all the work, all the underlying work, and all the work to prepare for tonight's meeting, and then being with us this evening as well. Because we will get through this as a community. West Sacramento that's been our story for ever since Margaret McDowell mapped Broderick back in the gold rush. Is us against all odds surviving and then thriving, and we are going to do it again. And you can see that in the kinds of volunteerism that's happening in the community. People are inventing, a draw with Stacy, or get oranges on Michigan Street from Angel. I mean, people in the community are stepping up to support one another. They are, for the most part, we're all following all the ever-changing regime of rules and requirements and health and science and medical advice. Our community is looking out for one another, and we are resilient. And a good part of that is because of the work that our staff team is doing. So thanks to all of them. And then again, to my colleagues, I think I'm very fortunate to serve with you. Our community has a city council with such diverse expertise and background, and at a point like this, networks and connections in order to bring resources to bear to a small city like ours that has all the big city needs. We're really fortunate to have a group of council members that can do our best to deliver on behalf of the citizens that we serve. So thanks so much to everyone for that. So that is our only agenda item of regular business. Council calendar. Ms. Berlin, are you with us?
I'm still here. Putting on video here. Nothing to report tonight.
Right, no events coming up?
Unfortunately, no. Hopefully they'll be coming back soon.
We know things will have turned around when you have a new council calendar, right?
Definitely.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
City
you.
manager report. Do you have anything else you haven't covered?
No, I just mentioned that the next meeting's version of this item will include a couple of authorizations that I noted in the report. It would be the utility payment late fee waivers and how we're handling paid admin leave. So just to highlight for next time. We'll start working on that report tomorrow.
Good. Does that mean you're finally going to go to sleep?
Maybe.
All right. Questions on the
Thank
city
you.
manager report? City attorney report. He's not unmuting, so I'm assuming that means no report from the city attorney. Staff direction from members of the council. We have no future agenda item requests. So
Sorry, nothing to report.
Item requests. So. All right, thank you, Mr. City Attorney. All right, Councilmember Orozco. For the motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. Beverly Sandine.
It's been moved by Councilmember Orozco and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Sandine. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll on the motion to adjourn?
I'm sorry. I lost my sound there. Mayor Pro Tem Sandine,
Aye.
Councilmember Guerrero,
Aye.
Councilmember Ledesma,
Aye.
Councilmember Orozco.
Aye.
and Mayor Cabaldon.
Aye. The motion to adjourn carries
Thank you.
unanimously, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.